My name is Diana Whitman. I'm 35 years old. And this is the story of how my own mother laughed at me in front of the entire family, only to fall silent when my sister's boss called me Madam CEO. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina. One of those towns where Sunday service was treated like a red carpet, and praise was reserved for children who followed the blueprint: get straight A's, marry someone with a clean haircut and a steady job, then have 2 kids before 30. I wasn't that kind of child. I was the middle one. Amanda came first, perfect Amanda. She was 3 years older and had the kind of smile people used on Christmas cards. She played the violin by age 6, had a book deal by 22, and every school award she got was mounted on our living room wall like trophies from a royal campaign. Then came Michael, the baby. Even when he failed algebra twice, Mom still cooed, "He's just got too much on his plate, my poor boy." But me? I was the glitch in the perfect system. Too quiet, too curious, too weird. I didn't want dolls, I wanted circuit boards. While Amanda wrote essays that made teachers cry, I was in the garage dismantling old radios to see how they worked. My father once found me in the kitchen pulling apart the microwave. Instead of being impressed, he yanked the plug, muttering, "Diana, when will you act like a girl for once?" From the age of 10, I knew something was different about the way they saw me. Amanda was the future. Michael was the boy. I was just Diana, mentioned only when necessary. At school, I stayed under the radar. Not because I couldn't stand out, but because standing out always brought attention I didn't want. Teachers would praise my code projects, and the compliments would just float in the air, unanswered, until they drifted into nothing. I remember one moment vividly. 11th grade. Parent-teacher conference. Mr. Hall, my computer science teacher, looked at my mother and said, "Your daughter could run a tech firm one day. She's gifted." Mom blinked, then smiled politely. "We're hoping she considers something stable. Maybe nursing." When we got home that night, I cried. Not because she doubted me, but because she didn't even consider asking what I wanted. That was the night something in me shifted. From then on, I stopped waiting for approval. I got a scholarship to a state university in California, packed my bags with no ceremony, and boarded a one-way flight. No goodbye party, no send-off. Just my mom handing me a bag of crackers at the airport saying, "Don't do anything stupid." I didn't. But what I did do was disappear. Not in the tragic sense. I just stopped updating them. Stopped offering information that would be twisted, minimized, or ignored. They thought I was freelancing. They weren't wrong. I waited tables at a downtown sushi joint, designed websites for small nonprofits, and coded back-end structures in exchange for rent and ramen. But behind all that, I was building something real, something big. In sophomore year, I met Celine, graphic designer, sarcastic genius, and a powerhouse in a 5-foot frame. We clicked over coffee, shared complaints about being underestimated, and eventually launched a platform designed to help community clinics track patient data securely. We called it Novalink. It started small. Really small. But in 2 years, we signed our first major client, an NGO with international backing. Then came another. And another. I used my initials, D. Whitman, on every press release, every contract. Not out of fear. Just to keep the world guessing. By the time I turned 30, Novalink was valued at $900 million. But my parents still thought I was designing pamphlets for hospitals. It was almost funny. Almost. I didn't care about correcting them. Not then. I was too focused. Too protective of the thing I'd built with my own blood and insomnia. But life has a funny way of pushing you back into the rooms you thought you'd outgrown. That push came on the 4th of July. "We're having the usual family barbecue," Mom texted. "Amanda's bringing her boyfriend. Don't be late." I stared at the message for a long time. Why go? Maybe because part of me still hoped. Hoped someone might ask the right question. Maybe even say they were proud. I didn't expect much. Just something more than, still working on those websites? I wore jeans. Plain white shirt. Drove myself in a rental to avoid the questions about the car. The backyard looked the same: white tents, tacky paper flags, the smell of overcooked ribs floating through humid air. Amanda arrived in a silk blazer, her new man, Miles, close behind. Tall, tan, expensive watch. She floated toward the center of the yard like a debutante. "Diana." Mom called out. "Help me with the paper cups, will you? You've always had a knack for party things." I helped. Without a word. Amanda was holding court near the grill. "So then I told the VP of Langford, if we push the merger deadline, it could cost millions. And he actually listened." "She's flying to Zurich next week," Mom chimed in proudly. "Our baby's consulting for global finance now." Everyone clapped. I poured myself a drink and sat on the side table. Next to Michael's girlfriend and Uncle Ted, who still wore socks with sandals. Someone joked, "Diana, you still freelancing?" and another added, "I've got a cousin who needs a website." I smiled faintly. Said nothing. Until the Range Rover pulled up. It wasn't subtle. It never is when someone like Howard Reynolds walks in. Amanda straightened up immediately. Her voice hit a new pitch. "That's my boss. Be nice, everyone." He stepped out, cream linen shirt, designer shades, presence thick like smoke. Amanda rushed over. "So glad you made it, sir. Hope the directions weren't confusing." Howard gave her a nod. Then his eyes swept the yard and landed on me. He froze. Took a step forward, then another. "Diana Whitman?" His voice was louder than intended. Every conversation stopped. I stood, slowly. "Howard. You're early." He blinked. "I didn't realize you were Amanda's sister." He looked at the others. Then back at me. "Madam CEO." I didn't mean to crash the party. The word echoed, CEO. You could have heard a wine glass fall. Amanda's face drained of color. Mom gasped. Howard glanced at the stunned crowd. "Lucent's acquisition of Mira Data finalizes next week. Diana here, she's the reason. She's been leading every phase of the deal." Silence. Like someone had turned off the volume on the entire yard. I turned to Amanda, her lips twitching into a stunned stutter. You're CEO of Lucent?" I raised my glass, calmly. "I've been doing something with computers." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Just the sight of Amanda's jaw slightly trembling, her boyfriend blinking like he just got dropped into a different universe, and Mom standing frozen with a plate of grilled chicken in her hand, that was enough. "CEO of Lucent?" Amanda repeated, as if the words were in a foreign language. "You never told us. You never said a word." I took a slow sip of lemonade and shrugged. "You never asked." That might have been the truest thing I'd said all year. Howard, clearly sensing he'd detonated a bomb, cleared his throat. "I apologize if I intruded, but I'd assumed, well, I suppose I shouldn't have assumed anything." He turned to me. "The last board review was outstanding, by the way. Your data rollout plan for the Southeast Division, it's already transforming 3 of our clinics." "Good to hear," I replied, still calm, still holding the water glass like a wine goblet at an elite fundraiser. "We're starting to beta test the AI modules in Georgia and Tennessee next quarter." Amanda looked like she was going to pass out. My father finally spoke. "Wait. Diana, you run that tech company?" I turned toward him. "Yes, Dad. I founded it. I've been the CEO for the past 8 years. But," he blinked rapidly. "I thought you were freelancing." Amanda said. Amanda cut in, desperate now. You never posted anything about this. No LinkedIn updates. No pictures. We just thought you were keeping busy. Busy? I wanted to laugh. Instead, I just looked at her. Funny how silence gets mistaken for failure. Howard looked between us, clearly trying to read the tension. Amanda, I'll see you at the office Tuesday. But I imagine the conversation might be a bit different now. He nodded again, this time to me, with a slight smile. Madam CEO. Then he left. Just like that. No one moved. My mom put down the chicken plate and muttered, I need to sit. I walked to the side table and sat down again, right next to Uncle Ted and his Hawaiian shirt. I speared a grape off a half-wilted fruit tray and popped it into my mouth. Nobody dared say a word for a long, thick moment. Finally, Michael, my brother, the family's baby, cleared his throat. So, you really run Lucent? Like, the billion-dollar company Lucent? I nodded. We're actually closer to $1.5 billion after the Mira data integration. Amanda shook her head slowly, like her brain was trying to reboot. You've been in meetings with my boss for 6 months and you didn't think to mention it? You let us all think you were freelancing? I finished for her. Because when you brought up Zurich 3 times in one lunch and no one asked what I did, it was easier not to explain. She flushed red, furious, and humiliated at once. You could have told us. And you could have listened. But we're here now, so, cheers, I guess. I clinked my glass lightly on the edge of the table. The truth settled like thick smoke over the backyard. Every family member wore a different version of shame on their faces. Some confused. Some defensive. Some just stunned. Aunt Laura tapped furiously on her phone, no doubt Googling Lucent systems to confirm I wasn't bluffing. I caught sight of a relative from Dad's side, the one who used to call me the quirky one, just staring at her lemonade like it was spiked. Then my mom stood. Not gracefully. Just enough to look like she wanted to take control. You never told us because you wanted to humiliate us? My eyes narrowed, the glass halfway to my lips. No, Mom. I never told you because I got tired of being laughed at. Or ignored. Or treated like my dreams were some embarrassing phase. But we were worried about you, she insisted. All those years talking about startups, about tech stuff. And not once, I interrupted, did anyone say, Diana, tell us more. You all assumed it wasn't real. That it was a phase. Amanda got violin solos. I got silence. Her lips quivered. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said, sharper now. And there's a difference. Amanda was staring at the ground, but I could see her shoulders twitching, like her pride was trying to claw its way back. This isn't fair, she muttered. You made us all look like fools. I turned to her. No. You made yourselves look like fools. I just didn't correct you. That was the final crack. Amanda stood, grabbed her purse, and stormed off toward the side gate. Miles looked from her to me, then followed like a shadow. But not before giving me one curious glance. Not anger. Not judgment. Just interest. Like he'd just realized the wrong sister had been sitting at the side table. I stayed where I was. Mom collapsed into the patio chair, silent now. Dad paced. Aunts and uncles murmured. Even the kids had stopped playing. Michael sat down next to me. His voice was quiet. I'm sorry, he said. I turned slightly. For what? For assuming. For repeating what they all said. I thought you were just drifting. I was building. He looked down at his hands. Guess we never saw the scaffolding. I nodded. That's the thing about real work, Michael. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to last. And mine had lasted. In fact, it was just getting started. Michael sat beside me, his shoulders hunched like someone who had just realized how much he'd missed. I always thought, he said carefully, that you were just floating. Like you didn't know what you wanted. I turned to look at him. I knew exactly what I wanted. I just didn't need to make it everyone's headline. His lips parted like he wanted to say more, but nothing came out. The truth was, none of them really knew me. Not the real me. They knew the girl who fixed the TV remote, who quietly cleaned up after Amanda's graduation party, who sent money for Grandma's medicine without attaching a name. But they never asked why I stayed so quiet, why I never brought anyone home, or why I never looked impressed when Amanda shared her latest accomplishment. They never asked because they never saw me as someone worth asking. Now suddenly, the entire backyard saw me. Even the trees felt like they were listening. You built Lucent from nothing? Uncle Ted asked. Like, from scratch? Yes, I said simply. In a rented apartment with a second-hand laptop and a $1,500 grant. Dang, he mumbled. I can't even fix my email password. A few family members gave nervous laughs, unsure whether it was safe to break the tension. I didn't laugh. I just sat there, watching their faces shift from superiority to confusion to something that resembled awe. I still don't get it, my mom said, almost to herself. Why wouldn't you tell us you were running a billion-dollar company? Because when I said I was working on something big, you said, don't get your hopes up. When I mentioned venture capital, you called it gambling. When I sent the article from the Nonprofit Tech Awards, you asked if I'd found a real job yet. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. That wasn't what I meant. It's what you said, I replied, not cruelly, but not softly either. Dad had his arms crossed now. He hadn't sat down since Howard left. His eyes darted between the grill and the lawn, as if somewhere among the picnic tables he'd find a way to reverse time. So what now, he said. You're the CEO. Amanda works under a company you own. You just gonna throw that in our faces forever? I met his gaze calmly. I didn't throw it. It landed because no one was paying attention. Silence again. Uncle Rob leaned over from the other table. I always said you were smart, you know. Remember when you fixed my laptop? I didn't respond. Because everyone had a memory now. They were all suddenly recalling moments that proved they believed in me. They were reconstructing the past to make themselves feel better. But I wasn't interested in comforting them. Jessica, the family's second cousin who used to eye me with smug pity, walked up, arms crossed tightly. So, you really run Lucent? The platform that integrated with the National Health Registry? Yes. I just got approved for that program through work. I didn't know you were behind it. You never asked. She paused. Well, good for you. I raised an eyebrow. Thanks. She turned and walked off before I could ask if she was choking on that compliment. Later that evening, Amanda came back. She'd gone to sit in her car, apparently, but returned with her blazer folded neatly over her arm and her eyes rimmed in red. I didn't expect tears from her. Amanda never cried, not in public. She stood next to the table and didn't look at me. Her voice was lower than usual. So, what does this mean? I frowned. What do you mean? For me, she clarified. Does this mean I'm fired? Reassigned? I just got promoted. I didn't know you owned the whole thing. I sighed. You still report to your division lead. I don't interfere with day-to-day operations. She blinked, visibly trying to believe that. You're saying you won't use your position to retaliate? Retaliate? I'm not here for revenge, Amanda. I'm here because I was invited to a barbecue. Her eyes finally lifted to meet mine. I didn't think you were capable of this. I know, I said. That's exactly why I am. She turned her face slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know whether to be ashamed or impressed. You can be both. A beat of silence passed between us. And then she said something I never thought I'd hear. I'm sorry. I studied her. No sarcasm, no deflection. Just the raw words. Vulnerable. Stripped down. I've spent so much of my life being the one everyone clapped for, she continued. I didn't know how to handle it when someone else had the spotlight. You didn't just have the spotlight, I said. You had the microphone, the stage, and the script. Amanda gave a faint laugh, then a sigh. And you had silence. And in that silence, I said quietly, I built something. She nodded slowly. Guess we all thought silence meant failure. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That night, I stayed long enough to watch the sparklers fizzle out. The children's laughter faded. The adults slowly picked up their pride and paper plates. And I remained seated, sipping from the same glass of lemonade, now diluted with melted ice. As I rose to leave, my father walked over. Diana. I turned. He wasn't angry anymore. Just uncertain. You're not coming to Tyler's party next weekend? I wasn't planning on it. He hesitated, then said, maybe you should. We might want to hear more this time. I gave a small nod. Maybe. Maybe not. Because sometimes, when you spend a lifetime being overlooked, the first moment of being seen can feel more like an invasion than validation. The drive back to my hotel was quiet, but my mind was anything but. The past few hours felt like a lifetime compressed into a backyard barbecue. I replayed it over and over, the stunned silence, Amanda's stuttering disbelief, my mother's trembling hands, and Howard's voice calling me Madam CEO like it was just another Tuesday. For a long time, that title didn't mean anything to me outside of contracts and investor calls. It was a formality, a role. But tonight? It became a mirror. Not to show others who I was, but to show myself who I'd become without anyone's permission. That night, in the hotel room, I didn't answer any texts. Not Michael's tentative "you good?" Not even Amanda's long-winded apology, which I could barely get through without rolling my eyes. It wasn't that I was angry anymore, it's just that I needed space to feel what I hadn't let myself feel for years. Freedom. Not from them, but from needing them to validate me. I took a long shower, changed into the softest tea I owned, and stared out the window at Greenville's sleepy skyline. I used to look out at these same rooftops as a teenager and dream of escape. Now I was here, not as the invisible one, not as the backup plan, but as someone who had built something lasting. And yet, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was release. The next morning, I was getting ready to check out when the front desk called. Miss Whitman, someone's here to see you. I frowned. Who? He says he's your father. I froze. I hadn't spoken to my dad one-on-one in nearly 3 years. He was the kind of man who avoided hard conversations like they were diseases. For him to show up here, without Mom? That was something new. I stepped out to the lobby. There he was. Wearing the same old brown loafers and a navy polo. His hands were stuffed in his pockets like he wasn't sure whether to stay or run. Dad? He turned. Hey, Dee. I hadn't heard him call me that in over a decade. Is everything okay? I asked. He cleared his throat. Mind if I come up for a few minutes? I hesitated. Then nodded. Back in the room, he didn't sit right away. He walked to the window, looked out, and nodded at the view. This is nicer than I expected. Thanks, I guess. He finally turned, arms crossed, lips pressed tightly. I came because I realized something last night. I waited. You weren't just left out, he said. You were dismissed. That stopped me. I didn't mean to dismiss you, Diana, he added. I just didn't understand you. And sometimes, when I don't understand something, I pretend it doesn't matter. That sounds like a you problem, I said quietly. He nodded. It was. It is. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him. Do you know what it felt like, I said, growing up in a house where the only praise I got was for doing the dishes right? His jaw tightened. You gave Amanda a celebration for every report card, I continued. You cheered Michael for trying. But me? I once stayed up 2 days building a website for a community group, and all you said was, don't forget to mow the lawn. He looked down, ashamed. And I knew this time it wasn't performative. I've been proud of you, he said, barely above a whisper. Just, quietly. Silently. That's the problem, I replied. You were always proud in silence. And all I ever heard was doubt. He walked over and sat in the chair across from me. I don't expect you to forgive me today, he said. But I want to learn. If you'll let me. I studied him for a long moment. Are you asking for a relationship? I'm asking for a chance. A knock at the door broke the tension. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything, but I opened it anyway. A tray with 2 coffees and a lavender plant. My mother's touch. Subtle. Trying. I almost laughed. I brought the tray in and placed it between us. She said you like gentle things that make a clear difference, my dad said, rubbing the back of his neck. I picked up a coffee. Maybe I do. He hesitated. Will you tell me how Lucent works? Not the corporate stuff. The real stuff. You want to know what I do? I want to know who you are. I didn't smile. But I started talking. About systems. About integration. About the idea of building bridges between people and data when the people in your own family don't even see you. And he listened. Really listened. When he left, he shook my hand like I was a partner. Not a daughter. Not a disappointment. But someone with power. I walked him to the elevator. As the doors closed, he looked at me. I still see you as my daughter, he said. But now I see the part of you I was too afraid to look at. I said nothing. But I believed him. The week after the barbecue was a blur of press calls, meetings, and final documents for the Mira data acquisition. But something had shifted. Not in the company. In me. For years, I'd built success like it was armor, welded from silence, reinforced by low expectations. Every time someone underestimated me, I smiled. Because the less they knew, the freer I was to create, grow, and win in peace. But now? My name was in the headlines. People were connecting the dots. Investors, journalists, former classmates. Even relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were tagging me in posts with words like, so proud to have a CEO in the family. Convenient. Still, I didn't care about the noise. Not really. Until I opened an email from Amanda. Subject line, if you have 5 minutes. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I had a dozen more important things to do, but I clicked anyway. Diana. I've been thinking a lot. About everything, barbecue, Howard, our childhood. I know I wasn't kind. I know I was loud. And you were quiet. But that didn't mean you were lesser. I realize now, you weren't chasing the spotlight because you were building the damn stage. I have a presentation coming up next Thursday for our Asia-Pacific restructuring plan. I was going to pitch an outdated system. But then I thought, maybe, if you're willing, you could give me a crash course on your integration model? Not for show. Not for a flex. Just, so I do this right. If you say no, I understand. But if you say yes, I'll be ready to listen. Amanda. I read it twice. Then again. This wasn't her trying to regain control. This wasn't performance. This was Amanda, finally seeing me not as her weird sister, but as someone worth learning from. I replied with 3 lines. Meet me Wednesday, 6 p.m. Zoom link below. Bring real questions. That evening, when the call connected, Amanda was already waiting. No makeup. No boardroom background. Just her, at her kitchen table, a notepad in hand. For an hour, I walked her through the system Lucent was piloting in Southeast Asia: multilingual medical data bridges, AI feedback loops, predictive alerts for crisis response. She took notes. Real ones. Every 5 minutes, she stopped to clarify something. She didn't pretend to know. She didn't deflect. She asked. And for the first time in 30 years, we weren't sisters trying to outshine each other. We were just women. 2 professionals raised in the same house, now trying to build a new kind of connection. When the call ended, she looked up and said, "I'm going to quote you tomorrow. Not to show off. Just because your system is actually brilliant." I smirked. "Make sure you get the acronyms right." She laughed, then hesitated. "Diana, thank you." "For what?" "For giving me another chance." I didn't reply right away. But I nodded. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about rebuilding. Later that week, Mom called. Not to nag. Not to guilt trip. But to ask. "Do you think machine learning could help with elder care?" she asked. I read something about AI helping detect early Alzheimer's. I nearly dropped my mug. "You're reading about AI now?" "I got that book you sent," she said. "Hello AI, Goodbye Fear." "It's actually interesting." I smiled. "That book's like a spoonful of tech with honey." "Well," she chuckled. "I figured if my daughter runs a company that uses it, I should at least know what the letters stand for." "AI? Artificial intelligence," she said proudly. Then, softer, "You always had it. The intelligence. I just didn't know how to understand your world." "You didn't have to understand it," I said. "You just had to ask." There was a pause. "I'm asking now." I didn't say anything. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't building alone anymore. The following Monday, I got a message from Amanda. The pitch went amazing. One of the VPs said my approach felt Lucent inspired. I told them I had the best tutor. "You may not have needed this, but I did. Thank you for being better than I was. I see you now. Amanda." I read it. Saved it. Didn't reply. Not because I was ignoring her. But because I didn't need to say anything. She finally saw me. And more importantly, she was learning how to stay in that light without stepping on mine. The next time I saw my family wasn't for a holiday or some awkward gathering, it was for something I never expected, a feature article. A journalist from Forbes Impact Tech had reached out to do a profile on Lucent's community data model and how we'd scaled it across public health and disaster relief systems globally. The title of the piece was already decided: The Silent Visionary, Diana Whitman's Quiet Revolution. I wasn't thrilled about the spotlight. I never was. But the article focused on the work, the systems, the ethics behind the code, so I agreed. It wasn't about glamour. It was about impact. A week later, the article went live. 20 minutes after it dropped, I got a call from Michael. D? His voice was a bit breathless. "You're on the front page of Forbes." "Like, the Forbes. You're trending on LinkedIn. Our aunt just posted it and tagged everyone." I chuckled. "Yeah. I saw." "No warning?" he asked. I didn't think it mattered. "It matters," he said. "You look like you're running the world." I raised an eyebrow, pacing my office. And how does the family feel about that? Well, he sighed. They're scrambling. Aunt Laura's telling everyone she knew from the beginning. Dad hasn't said a word. Mom's printed it out. Printed it? Yeah. Like, on paper. She highlighted your quotes. That stopped me. What? She said I didn't understand what she was building. But I'm glad the world does now. I swallowed. Are you okay? Michael asked. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I was emotional in a way that startled me. Because something inside me, a wound I'd buried under a mountain of achievement, was beginning to scar over. That night, as if the universe had a sense of timing, I got a text from Mom. I read your article 3 times. And I cried the 3rd time. Not because you were successful. But because you were always that girl. And I never saw her clearly. I stared at the message for a long time. There were no emojis. No guilt. No requests. Just recognition. And for the first time in decades, I replied without restraint. I wasn't waiting for you to see me, Mom. I was learning to see myself. But I'm glad you're here now. She wrote back one sentence. I'm listening now, with both ears and all my heart. 2 days later, Amanda invited me to speak on a panel at her firm's Women in Tech event. I almost declined, thinking it might be another publicity stunt, but she followed up with a video message. I know you prefer to stay out of the spotlight, she said, but some young woman out there, maybe a middle child like you, needs to see what's possible when you're written off too soon. She paused. And I'd like to sit in the audience and clap for you for once. That did it. I showed up. I wore a charcoal gray jumpsuit, clean, minimal, quiet power. As I stepped onto the stage, Amanda stood in the front row. She didn't blink. She didn't scroll her phone. She just watched. And when I finished speaking, when the applause came, not thunderous, but genuine, she stood up. First one. Only one. Until others followed. Afterward, we grabbed coffee in the building's lobby. She leaned in and said, I told Miles everything. About what happened at the barbecue. He said he never saw me look as stunned as that day. What did you tell him? I asked. That I finally understood that success isn't loud. Sometimes, it's quiet and steady and doesn't need applause to be real. I nodded. Sometimes silence builds louder legacies than noise ever could. She grinned. I may quote that. You already owe me for the integration architecture, I joked. She laughed. And it wasn't bitter or forced. It was real. When I left the event, my phone buzzed with a new message from Dad. I told a guy at the barbershop my daughter was on Forbes this week. He didn't believe me. So I showed him. And then I made him Google you. Thought you should know. I smiled, really smiled, as I walked back into the Seattle air. Because I'd spent so much of my life proving my worth in the shadows. And now, without ever asking for it, the light had found me anyway. But the truth? I didn't need it anymore. 6 months passed. Lucent's Tokyo team launched a new feature that enabled multilingual health assessments in rural clinics. Our Berlin office finalized a partnership with a refugee integration program. And back home in Seattle, I sat in my office one quiet morning, sipping green tea, while an intern nervously asked, "How do you stay so calm under pressure?" I gave her the simplest answer I had, because no one expected me to succeed. That gave me room to learn without the spotlight. But the truth went deeper than that. I stayed calm because I had already survived the most grueling pressure of all, a family that taught me my silence was a weakness, and then watched as I turned it into my greatest strength. That weekend, I visited my parents again. The house looked smaller than I remembered. It wasn't the walls or the ceiling, just the scale of the conversations that used to happen there. My mother had printed out more articles about artificial intelligence, circled terms in pen. I still don't get the difference between machine learning and deep learning, she confessed. I smiled. You don't need to. You're trying. That's what matters. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Not as a curiosity. Not as a mystery. But as someone she respected. I used to think silence meant uncertainty, she said. Now I realize, sometimes, it means control. I nodded. Later that night, after dinner, we sat around the table, Dad, Michael, Amanda, Mom, and me. For once, no one interrupted. No one turned a conversation back toward themselves. Amanda even asked me about our upcoming deal in Brazil, and Mom refilled my tea before I could even finish it. Michael reached across the table and tapped the edge of my cup. Remember the barbecue? He asked with a grin. How could I forget? I still think about Howard's face when he called you Madam CEO. That moment was straight out of a movie. Everyone laughed. Even me. But beneath the laughter was something deeper, a shared understanding that the old family dynamic had finally, irrevocably changed. Not because I demanded it. But because truth has a way of reshaping everything around it. The next morning, Amanda and I took a walk down the old trail behind our childhood home. We used to race there, her always ahead, me always trailing behind. This time, we walked side by side. You know what I realized, she said as we crossed the small wooden bridge. What's that? I used to need to be the best in every room. But now, I think I just want to be in the right rooms. With the right people. I looked at her, a half smile forming. That's growth. She nudged my arm. Guess I'm finally learning from the real CEO in the family. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, we weren't comparing. We were just walking. Two women raised in the same house, finally ready to stop performing and start seeing each other clearly. Back in Seattle, I returned to my usual rhythm. Work. Strategy. Quiet wins. Until one day, a young woman approached me after a panel discussion. She had trembling hands and a voice that barely rose above a whisper. My family thinks I'm wasting my time on my app, she said. They keep telling me to get a real job. I looked her in the eye. I know that feeling. She blinked, surprised. But you're exactly who I was when I started, I interrupted. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe enough to keep building. She wiped her eyes. Do you think it gets better? Not always, I said truthfully. But one day, someone will ask what you've been working on, and the answer will change everything. She nodded slowly. I gave her my card. Email me when you launch. I want to see what you've built. As she walked away, I realized that the journey I took alone had created space for others. I no longer needed to be the girl no one clapped for. And I didn't need the applause now either. Because now, I had something better. A legacy. I once thought being ignored was the cruelest fate. But over time, I realized being overlooked gave me something rare, the freedom to grow without comparison, to fail without shame, and to succeed without expectation. I didn't rewrite my family's story. I wrote my own. And now, they're finally reading it. Welcome to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. If Diana's journey moved you, share it with someone who's ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated. Leave a comment below, because maybe your silence was never weakness. Maybe, like Diana, it was your quiet superpower all along.